Are you doing well? Good. It is good to see you every week. We start by welcoming our campuses. So whether you're in Kenosha, Racine, online, we love you, and we love all the people in the room here today. We're in a teaching series called, does anybody know the name? Summer School. All right, we've only been in this for like 12 weeks. Come on, man. And every week we're taking on a unique and a challenging topic. And what we're trying to do is accumulate knowledge, grow in knowledge. That's what we're doing. 3,000 years ago, King Solomon of Israel, here's what he writes. He says, intelligent people are always ready to learn. Their ears are open for knowledge. So, I think we all want to be intelligent people, right? We're failing. We're falling short. I'm looking at some of you, right? No, we want to be intelligent people. We want to be people who seek out knowledge, but not just seek it out, who apply it. Because if we apply the knowledge that we are learning, eventually, over time, it won't be immediate, but over time, we will become successful. We will grow in this word, success, right? It's what all of us want. Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to win at whatever they're doing in life. You want to win, I want to win. It's a part of being human. So back in 2004, a guy by the name of Matt Emmons, he competed in the Olympics. Some of you might remember this. He is a rifle shooter, and he is definitely a winner. He's got several gold medals. But back in 2004, he is competing in some shooting competitions. And in one of the events he's in, he is, without question, in first place. He's got a solid lead. And he has to take one more shot. It's his final shot. And all he needs to do is hit the target. Not even the bullseye. Just hit the target somewhere. And so he gets himself into position. He takes aim. He fires. And sure enough, he hits the bullseye. All right? Absolute great shot. Here's this guy, Matt. And he looks up on the scoreboard, and no points are added. And he's kind of perplexed. And he looks over to the judges in frustration. Right? Like, hey, what's happening here? I just hit the bullseye. What he did not realize is that prior to shooting, he became a little disoriented. And although he was standing in lane 2, he shot in lane 3. So he hit the target in the other lane. So just like that, he went from being in first place. He was about to take it home, right? From first place to 8th place. Devastating. When you work hard for something, when you prepare, when you give it your all, right, you want to win. Over the years, I've been in different sports, played intramural football in college. I, was a basketball team when I was in high school. And when I was in elementary school, I played soccer, believe it or not. Basketball was probably where I was the most successful. I've shared before how I actually turned down a scholarship to play for Duke University so that I could be a pastor and just serve the Lord. No, I'm totally missing it. I was not even a decent athlete. I wasn't mediocre, man. I was horrible, but I can tell you this. Every time I played some sort of sport, whether it was on an official team or just for fun, I wanted to win. Because winning is better than what? Losing. But winning is better than losing. Everybody wants to win. Okay? Sports, business. If you buy a lottery ticket, you want to win. I want you to win, and I want you to tithe on what the Lord blesses you with, right? I want to win in every area of my life, and I know you do as well. And so here's the deal. If we are going to win in life, it's important to know what the win is before we go after it. We have to define the win, and so my question to you today is, have you defined the win in the key areas of your life? Do you know what success looks like for you? So do you know what success is in your marriage? Maybe you have just kind of an idea of what that looks like, and that's fine, but do you know what it is? Do you know what success is in parenting? What does success look like for you in your career or in the key areas of your life? The way most people are going to define success, come on, we say money, fame, power, my name is trending on Twitter, right? Yay, me. And yet, when you hear famous musicians or bands sing about success, they often sing about it from a point of frustration, right? I mean, think about this. Rolling Stones, what did they sing? I can't get no. Yep, I'm falling short. You too. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. How about Notorious B.I.G.? More money? Yeah. Taylor Swift got a list of ex-lovers. They tell you I'm insane, but I've got a blank space, baby. That has nothing to do with success. I just want to know if anybody actually listens to Taylor Swift. That's great. Right? True success is so difficult to define. So difficult to define. I mean, think about this. You can say, well, success is reaching all your goals. Well, how about if you reach all of your goals and the people who are closest to you don't respect you? Is that success? Right? If you have a ton of money, man, you got so much money in your bank account, you don't know how to spend it all, but you're rarely at peace internally. Is that success? Because true success is not easy to define. It's multifaceted. It's just got so many different things to consider. And so today, as part of our summer school series, what I want to do is I want to talk about success, but I want to do it in the arena of finances. I want to talk about how to be financially successful. We're talking about this today because Jesus was a storyteller. And Jesus told parables all the time. A parable is a story with a meaning behind it, right? Well, 16 of the 38 parables that Jesus told had to do with handling money and possessions. It's a big topic. It's an important topic. And we know this because, come on, how we're doing financially, for the good or bad, absolutely impacts our life. It impacts our stress levels. It impacts how we interact with each other. It impacts how we, our fights and the tensions in our household. And so let me just ask you, when it comes to financial success, how do you define it? Is it financial independence? I mean, they could let me go today from my job and I'd be okay. I could understand that. That'd be success, right? Is it accumulating and achieving a certain net worth? Is that what success is? Is it having a YouTube channel that provides a consistent income for you so you can kind of do whatever you want? What is financial success for you? And if you've never thought about this, don't have a definition, let me give you a definition that my wife and I have had really for 25 years of our marriage. Here it is. Financial success is living a life of contentment, gratitude, generosity, and margin. Yes, that's simple. A life of contentment, gratitude, generosity, and margin. Because those 4 words, if my wife and I can live them out, they will lead to peace. Because when it comes to money, there are 2 different mindsets we can have. The first is a scarcity mindset, and the second is an abundance mindset. Scarcity mindset and abundance mindset. The scarcity mindset is the mindset that holds tightly to everything. Right? This is the mindset that says there is never going to be enough. And it doesn't matter what you have, you can have a scarcity mindset. The 1800s, Hetty Green was the richest woman in America. She had a couple $billion if you were to take her money and translate it into today's dollars, right? But here she is. She wore a black dress every day, the same dress. She refused to use heat or hot water because it costs money. Her son had to have his leg amputated. Many people think it was because of the delay in finding a free medical service, which she had taken her time on. So here she has a couple $1 billion, and she chose to live as though she was almost penniless. And so she's given the title miser. I don't know if you know this, but the word miserable comes from the word miser. Right? A miser is someone who spends their life acquiring and accumulating and holding on to what they have. They are not happy people. And one time, Jesus actually told a story about a guy with a scarcity mindset. Here's what Jesus said. He said, a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, let's go back here. Let's go back. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all of my crops. Let's just pause. Because I think we need to take a moment of silence for this guy. I mean, this is a poor guy. I mean, he owns so much stuff. Think of his stress levels. So much stuff, he doesn't have room enough to put everything, right? And so here is this rich man with all this stuff, and he's stressed out, and he's calling his family, and he's calling his friends, and he's saying, hey, I need you to pray for me. I don't know what to do. I made it into the next tax bracket, and I just need wisdom. I'm stressed. Here's what we read next. Then he said, I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all of my wheat and other goods. He continues. He says, and then I'll sit back and I'll say to myself, my friend. I mean, he's talking to himself. He said, my friend, I'm feeling good. I'm doing well, right? You have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. So here's a guy. I've got so much stuff, I can't even keep my house clean. I've got so many clothes, I can't even fit them all into one closet. But instead of getting rid of some, because God knows I might wear it someday again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build big storage facilities to keep it all. This reminds me of my daughter, Alyssa, because Alyssa, 21 years old, she lives with me. She has a full-time gig, she has a job, and so I charge her rent, and we've got this relationship. But Alyssa has a lot of independence, and I said to her several weeks ago, because I had seen her room, the door was open. I don't just barge in there. I seen her room, and I looked in, and I said, Alyssa, you are a hoarder. How do you even walk in this room? There's just so much stuff in here. This is ridiculous. You could be on an episode of Hoarders, and I gave her a time limit. I said, it has to be cleaned up by this day. And she looks at me without missing a beat and says, Dad, I'm not a hoarder. I am a collector. And I'm like, oh, that's what this guy is, right? He is a collector. Yes. Well, the guy in this story, here's what we read next about him. God actually was talking to him. He responded to his kind of attitude. And God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you work for? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. Now, this is not a story of God punishing a guy for being rich. God doesn't actually kill this guy, right? This is a parable, and Jesus is just making a point. He's saying, hey, someday you will die, and then what? You've got all this great stuff, but what then? And the reason I tell you this story today, and the reason I'm asking you to pay attention to it, is because we all have a lot of stuff. In fact, let me show you a chart. This chart, if you look at it too, and I try to explain it too much, it's going to get a little confusing, so I'm going to really focus a lot on the blue part. But this chart represents consumption and how much stuff we consume, right? When it comes to like housing and cars and the stuff we buy, all of that type of stuff, right? This is a chart of consumption. The richest 20%, which is where I really want to focus, the richest 20% of people in our world consume 3/4 of the stuff produced in our world. The richest 20%, we'll leave this up here. The richest 20% of people in our world are responsible for purchasing 76% of things like food and housing and clothing and travel and education and Netflix subscriptions. Your 20% consume 76%. Now here you go. This isn't going to shock you. You're in that 20%. Well, I don't make much. Okay. If you're single and you make $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, you're in the richest 20% of people in our world. If you are married and you've got 2 kids and you've got a household income of $30,000, you both bring in $15,000, you got 2 kids, even though you live in America and you're only making $30,000 collectively, you're in the richest 20%. You don't feel rich, but you are. And what happens is a scarcity mentality looks at a chart like this and says, well, but it's America, and you got to understand people in other countries, they're not used to the life that we're used to, and they don't have access to what we have, so they don't think of it the same way, and it's really not, it's not apples to apples. A scarcity mentality looks at charts, they look at statistics, they look at facts, and they don't want anything to do with it. They just kind of want to dismiss it. But an abundance mentality embraces this. An abundance mentality says, I am rich. I can't keep my house clean. Right? I don't know what to do with all the clothes in my closet. But I don't feel bad for being rich. I don't apologize for it. I never chose to be born in the United States or live in the United States at this time period of history. But here's the deal. I see it. I recognize it, and I am grateful. That's it. It's just the attitude. I'm just grateful. King Solomon of Israel, he writes about how God blesses people, and here's what he writes. He says, the blessing of the Lord makes a person rich. Now, God blesses in different ways. Sometimes he blesses with good health. Sometimes it's through relationships. Sometimes it's through opportunities we're given. God blesses in many, many different ways. Sometimes God chooses to bless people with wealth. And he has done that to you, and he's done that to me. The vast majority of us, you might be an outlier, a rare exception. The vast majority of us, even though we don't feel like it, are in the top 20% of wealthiest people in this world. But that does not make us financially successful. If financial success is living a life of contentment, gratitude, generosity, and margin. Because these things need to be cultivated. They don't happen automatically. Right? This is why God is always at work trying to chip away at our values and our priorities and our worldview. Because he knows they need to be cultivated. In fact, there's a fascinating story in our Bible of a guy named Zacchaeus. All right? Zacchaeus is a Jew who collected taxes from other Jews on behalf of the Roman government. That's who he worked for. And so he's a tax collector, collecting taxes from his family and friends. And so what he would do is he would overcharge them. And he would exaggerate what they owed, and he made money off of them. He was a thief. Well, one day Zacchaeus, this guy who's not liked very much, he happens to meet Jesus. And it is a big moment. Right? If you've ever met somebody, seen somebody that's a celebrity that's, it's a big moment. My daughter, Caitlin, this week, she texted me and said, you'll never guess who I'm standing right by. And then she sent me a video from State Fair, and it was Giannis, right? Some of you probably saw that on the news. And so I screenshotted the video she sent me, and there he is. That's a big deal, right? That's for Zacchaeus. It's a big deal. He meets Jesus. He encounters him in a significant way. And we don't know what they talked about, but we know that the conversation was significant enough that it changed his heart. He saw something in Jesus. He experienced something in Jesus. I mean, we don't even read about Jesus bringing up the topic of money, but here's what we read happens. Zacchaeus stood before the Lord, and he said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Now, Jesus never told Zacchaeus to do that, but he did it anyway. Because when people encounter Jesus in a real way, something changes in their heart. Something changes in the way they treat people and talk to people. Something changes in their view and how they see the world. And something changes in their perspective of finances. And so for Zacchaeus, he was able through this encounter to move from scarcity thinking, how much can I store up because I may not have enough and I may be without. And, even though I have a bunch, I still need more. He was able to move from that kind of thinking to abundance type of thinking. And that's not easy. It's not easy for any of us. It is often a very long process. And the reason it's such a long process is because it's scary. Right? This is true of almost every single one of us. Whenever we receive money of any kind, we have an income, we get paid, whatever it is, the money we receive goes into different kind of buckets, right? And it never feels like we have enough. The biggest bucket, of course, is just the living type of bucket. This is like, man, I get paid, and now I've got bills and expenses, and I want to go out with my friends. I've got some debt I'm trying to pay down. That's the big one. And then we've got a savings bucket that's, pretty small, but if we're, trying to be strategic and prepare for the future, we want to put something in that. And then if there's anything left over, what we want to do is hopefully we want to have a giving bucket and say, hey, I want to be a blessing to people, a church, a nonprofit, an individual. But it's stressful because we only have so much money. The one thing we all have in common is these are the buckets in our life, and there's a stress attached to like, hey, how do I break all of this up and trying to just pay bills and child support and all the things that I've just obligated for. But the reason I bring this up is the order in which we place the buckets in life, and again, we all have these 3 buckets. The order in which we place them is a huge indicator of whether we have an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset. The order that most people put the buckets in, this isn't gonna shock you, it's live, save, and give. So I get paid, now I'm gonna go out to eat, I'm gonna get together with some friends, I've got some bills, I'm gonna pay my car payment, I'm gonna pay my subscription, I gotta live. And then, if there's anything left over, hopefully I'm gonna throw it into some savings, and if I can find a few bucks after that, I'm gonna throw it into giving. And this is just a very common way of living. And the reason it's so common, and the reason that most people order their buckets like this, has nothing to do with being a bad person or being so evil or being so greedy. The reason that so many people order their lives like this is because there's so much fear associated with money. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's a scarcity mentality. It's just like, I don't know that I'm ever going to have enough. And so I want to just make sure that I'm taking care of myself first, and then I'm saving, and then I'm giving. Most people that I know, vast majority of people I know, want to be super, super generous. They're just afraid. Some have never taken the steps forward. Some have just never, it's just because it's like, man, if I give, then I'm missing out here. And it's just, there's so much fear. But I bring this up because people who have an abundance mentality, they place their buckets in the exact opposite order. They choose to start with giving. They just say, this is what I'm going to do. And then they take some resources and they say, I'm just going to discipline myself and I'm going to save. And then they say, I'm going to take what's left and I'm going to live on it. So they start with giving, put aside for the future, and they use the rest for living. Personally, this is how I live. If you've been around Great Lakes Church for a while, you know, because I've talked very openly about this. King Solomon of Israel, I'm going to go to a speech therapist after this, but King Solomon of Israel, he says, honor God with everything you own, give him the first and the best. And so the first thing I choose to do when I receive income is give. And I personally, my wife and I, we've made this a practice in our life. We give back 10%. That's the amount we give, 10%, because it's the pattern that we see in ancient Jews and in followers of Jesus all throughout Scripture. And then I do my best. I don't always reach the goal. I do my best to put aside 10% into savings. And then I live on the 80% that's left. Now, I'm not going to pretend it's easy. It's way easier now because I've oriented my life in such a way that I can live on 80%. I've chosen a lifestyle that doesn't require me to spend 100% of my income. And part of the reason I've oriented my life like this is I just try to live with this awareness of God's blessing and that I'm so incredibly blessed to live in the United States at this time of history. Now, if this is not a practice in your life, give, save, live on the rest, let me just encourage you to begin thinking in this direction. In fact, let me give you a perspective on this, all right? I know it's never a good thing to see me standing here with a knife. But what I want you to do for a moment is I want you to picture money in the form of apples, right? All of us are given different amounts of apples in life, right? We're different amounts of money. Some have just excessive amounts of money, some very limited, but we're all given different amounts. And so you might have 3 apples, you might have 9 apples, you might have 15 apples, but just picture money as apples, right? If we want, when we get the apples, we can consume them all by ourselves. Right? I can just eat this and then go for the next one, eat it. And that's a choice. Or what I can do is I can take the apple and I can do something with them to bless others. So inside this apple, right, if I were to just cut this open, inside this apple are seeds, right? Very, very small seeds. And if I were to take the time and really wanted to spend the next 5 minutes, I could go through these and I could take out these little seeds and I could put them inside my hand. And I could eventually plant these seeds and fertilize and pay attention to them, and eventually other apple trees would grow. So I can take all the apples and I can have a meal for myself. Or I can open up the apples, take the seeds, plant them, and it won't just be a meal, it will be a miracle of sorts because other apples are being produced. And so think of it this way. Every time that I get paid, I make the choice to start by planting some of my resources. I just make the choice. I'm going to give some of this away. And it's something I've been doing since I was 15 years old, all right? And the reason that I have chosen to give, and I specifically give through the local church, is because the local church is the hands and feet of Jesus in our community. That's why we do so much work here and near and far. It's why we do work in Racine and in Kenosha. It's why we serve people overseas, right? And I want to be a part of that, and it's an honor. Now, to be fair, and I try to say this every time I talk about this type of stuff, right, once or twice a year, I try to be fair by saying, this is way easier for me than it's gonna be for some of you. Because I grew up in a home that modeled this. My parents are two of the most generous people I personally know, period. That being said, they have a nice house. It's not like they're living in extreme poverty, right? They have great cars, but they're crazy, crazy generous. I'm not making this up. They're so generous that one time I said to my dad, I said, Dad, I'm just afraid, like all this stuff you love to give away and help people with, and I'm afraid I'm gonna have no inheritance. And without missing a beat, he just looks at me and smiles and says, that's the goal. And I'm like, what? So here's the deal. If you're a follower of Jesus, I wanna challenge you to make giving a priority by choosing to give, save, and then live on the rest. Now, if you're not a follower of Jesus, I'm gonna challenge you to make giving a priority in your life because it's an amazing way to live. And I'm not inviting you to give to a local church if this isn't your belief system, this isn't your church family. But I'm asking you to give to nonprofits. I'm asking you to find people who you can be a blessing to. Because I'm just gonna tell you this, generous people are fun to be around. They're happy people. And if this isn't a practice in your life, I know this. It is fearful to start thinking in this direction. But my challenge is walk into your fear. Start changing your thinking. Now, I'm telling you, personally, I have an abundance mentality. I really do. I love to be generous. My top gift is the gift of giving. It just is, and I love it. I see God as a provider. It's not difficult for me. But I don't understand this. When it comes to church, because of the weight and the responsibility that I feel for this church, I often with the church have this scarcity mentality. And I get so nervous, and nope, we're gonna stop that. Your budget's cut, and we're not doing that anymore, and we're not doing that. And I just get so scared. And it's just in the last couple of weeks, something's been happening in my heart where I just said, man, we can't live like this. We have a mission for this church. God has given us a mission. And God, I pray, give me the courage, give our church the courage to walk into our fears, to walk into our insecurities so that we can be a blessing here, near, and far. Help us to be a church that continually gives and blesses people. And one of the biggest areas this has grown in me is with our children's ministry. Because we've cut their budget so many times, and hey, they can get by this and this. And I just started recently talking with those in our children's ministry. I just said, man, we're just opening up. We've got to be way more intentional in serving our kids and loving our kids and providing the ministry that's needed to really connect with them. And so I've just been praying, God, give me courage. If you are in a place where you're like, man, I think I have more of the mentality and the thinking of just kind of, I have to hold on to everything. Let me encourage you to pray something like, hey, God, thanks for your blessings. I don't want to consume everything that you've given to me. I want this to be more than just a meal for me. I ask that you would turn it into a miracle. And so, God, I'm not going to compare the amount of apples I have to someone else's apples. I'm not going to compare how these apples look because I want to complain about them sometimes. But here's what I'm going to do, God. I'm going to ask that you give me the courage to just step forward and be generous, and I'm going to leave the rest in your hands. See, this isn't just about being a generous church. It's so much more. It's about a lifestyle. It's about a mentality shift. I'm regularly just wondering, like, what if the people of Great Lakes Church just have the reputation for we are the most generous people in this community, in Kenosha, in Racine? Like, oh, that person goes to Great Lakes. I know it's going to be a good tip. Get ready. Right? What if we just had that reputation? Oh, you've got some need. You need someone to just talk to a Great Laker. They're not going to take care of it all, but I promise you they're going to do something because they just love to bless people. What if that was just our reputation? That every time we were invited to someone's house, we just brought something along because we wanted to be a blessing. Right? And I'm not saying that we can't ever receive. You know, I kind of have this rule of thumb because I go out with people all the time, and I have this rule of thumb. If I'm out with someone, it's the first time with them, and they just say, hey, you know, I want to take care of the meal, I let them do that. But my rule of thumb is I'm not going to let them do that a second time. It's the reason why I don't go out with people twice. I just go out with them one time and then switch friends, right? But in the first century, the Apostle Paul, he writes a letter, and I'm not going to read the verses, but in essence what he says is, hey, he writes to a young pastor named Timothy, and he says, hey, tell those who are rich in the world to not be proud and not trust in their money. And since you and I are rich in this world, let me just say, let's not be proud and let's not trust in our money. And then he goes on to just talk about learning to be generous and give. And he said that's where true life is found. And I'm telling you, it's the reason why my wife and I for 25 years we've given. And I hope you know, I don't say this out of arrogance. I don't even like saying it because it makes me uncomfortable, but I want you to know I'm smoking what I'm selling. In the last 25 years of our marriage, because we tallied it up, we've given away almost $250,000 back to the work of Jesus. And I have no regrets. And I invite you into this lifestyle. And I don't give because I think God needs something from me. He doesn't need something from you, but God does want something. He does want something for us. What he wants for us is to be free from the fear and control and the insecurity and the emotions that are so attached to money. Financial success is a life of contentment and gratitude and generosity and margin. And that's what I want. And that's what I want for you. So 2 things. If you've never made a decision to follow Jesus, I invite you into the Jesus way. And my prayer is that you would have an encounter like Zacchaeus, where something happens in your heart, not just with finances, but man, in every area of life where you're just like, man, if this is the Jesus way, I go the Jesus way. If you've never made a decision to follow Jesus, I invite you to open your heart and just in the quietness of your own heart, just say, I want to follow you. I receive the grace and the love and forgiveness of God into my life. And I make the decision to follow Jesus. And then in the weeks and months and years to follow, you can just continue to gather with us and watch online and connect in some way and learn what it means to follow Jesus. Secondly, I want to invite you, if you do not currently orient your life and your finances in the way that we talked about, give, save, live on the rest, I just want to encourage you to do it. Just say, I'm going to do something different. And if you're like, man, Dave, this idea of give 10% and save 10%, it's just overwhelming. Start with the percent that you feel comfortable with. And then just ask God over time, like, God, give me the courage to take another step. Start with 2%, start with 3%, but start somewhere. Let God begin to do a work inside of you. You can go to greatlakechurch.com/generosity-challenge, and you can sign up for a challenge. And the challenge is very simple. The challenge is to say, I will orient my finances. I'm going to try, I'm going to pray, I'm going to ask God for courage to give, save, and live on the rest and see what happens in my life. It's not an amount that I'm asking you to give. It's not a certain percentage that I'm telling you to give. I'm just saying, let's orient our life to be generous people and see what God does in our life. Let me pray for you. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for your incredible blessings. You are so good to us. You have blessed us with so much. Help us to grow in awareness. Help us to have an abundance mentality because you own it all and you are the ultimate provider. Give us the courage to walk into our fears. As we learn to give, save, live on the rest, help us to be crazy generous in every area of our life. In Jesus' name, amen.